Hanna stepped off the transport ship and into the massive halls of Nexus Station. Her boots clicked against the metal floor as she looked around in wonder. The station was bigger than any building she had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched, so high above her head that she could barely see it. Lights blinked and flashed everywhere like stars in the night sky. But what made her heart race were the aliens walking past her. A creature with 4 arms and blue skin carried a stack of weapons, taller than Hanna herself. Its eyes were completely black and seemed to look right through her. Another being floated by without touching the ground. It looked like it was made of purple mist and sparkled as it moved. Hanna had to step back when a giant lizard-like creature walked past her on 2 legs. It was twice as tall as any human and covered in green scales that looked harder than armor. This was her new home for the next 6 months. Nexus Station was where soldiers from across the galaxy came to train together. Earth had finally been invited to send representatives to the Galactic Defense Force. Hanna was one of only 12 humans chosen for this honor. She pulled her small bag over her shoulder and walked toward the registration desk. The alien behind. The counter had 3 eyes and skin that changed colors every few seconds. It looked at her with what seemed like boredom. Name. It said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. Hanna. From Earth. Human. The alien's 3 eyes blinked, one at a time. Processing. You are assigned to Training Wing 7. Commander Vexitar will handle your orientation. Hanna took the data pad the alien handed her and followed the directions through the winding halls of the station. Everywhere she looked, she saw more incredible sights. Weapons that glowed with their own light, armor that seemed to be alive and breathing. Training rooms where aliens practiced fighting with energy that crackled through the air like lightning. She found Training Wing 7 after getting lost twice. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and she entered a room full of alien soldiers. They all turned to look at her when she walked in. In the center of the room stood the largest creature Hanna had ever seen. It was clearly the lizard-like being she had seen in the hall earlier, but up close it was even more impressive. Its scales were not just green, but had patterns of gold and silver running through them. Its 3 eyes were bright yellow and seemed to glow from within. When it opened its mouth to speak, she could see rows of sharp teeth. So? The creature said in a deep voice that rumbled like thunder. This is the human. Yes, sir, Hanna replied. She had been told to show respect to all commanding officers, no matter what species they were. I am Hanna, reporting for training duty. The commander's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, but with all those teeth it looked more threatening than friendly. I am Commander Vexitar of the Saurid Military Elite. I have heard much about your species. Other aliens in the room began to gather around them. Hanna saw creatures she had never imagined could exist. One looked like it was made of living crystal, its body catching the light and throwing rainbow colors across the walls. Another seemed to be part machine and part insect, with metal arms and wings that buzzed softly. A third appeared to be made of pure energy, its form shifting and changing as she watched. Tell me, little human, Commander Vexitar continued, what makes your people think they belong among warriors? Hanna felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice steady. We wish to learn from the other species in the galaxy and contribute what we can to the common defense. This brought sounds from the other aliens that she realized was laughter, though it sounded nothing like human laughter. The crystal being made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The insect creature clicked and buzzed, the energy being pulsed with different colors. Contribute, repeated Vexitar, and his voice was full of amusement. Your species has barely left your homeworld. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses. You are soft and weak and short-lived. What could you possibly contribute to warriors who have conquered star systems? The other aliens made more laughing sounds. Hanna felt her face getting redder, but she remembered her grandfather's teachings about staying calm when others tried to make her angry. Perhaps we could prove ourselves through training, she said quietly. Prove yourselves. The commander's 3 eyes seemed to light up with delight. An interesting idea. He walked around her slowly and Hanna felt like prey being circled by a predator. She could hear his claws clicking against the metal floor with each step. "Very well, little human. Let us see what you can do." He stopped in front of her and leaned down so his enormous head was level with hers. "Tomorrow we will test your abilities on the long-range shooting course. You may compete against our finest marksmen." The room fell quiet. Even the background hum of the station's machinery seemed to fade away. "Sir?" said the crystal being in a voice like singing glass. "Surely you do not mean the advanced course. Even our best soldiers find it challenging." "Oh, but I do mean the advanced course," Vextar replied, never taking his eyes off Hana. "If the human believes her species can contribute to our forces, let her prove it where it matters most. Long-range precision is the foundation of all military tactics." The insect creature stepped forward. "Commander, with respect, the human's eyes are primitive. They can only see a small portion of the light spectrum. They have no enhancement capabilities, no computational assistance. It would be like asking a blind creature to paint a picture." "Exactly," said Vextar with satisfaction. "When she fails, and fail she will, it will serve as a lesson to all humans about their proper place in the galactic order." Hana felt anger growing in her chest, but she pushed it down. Getting angry would not help her now. Instead, she thought about her grandfather teaching her to hunt in the mountains of Korea. She remembered his calm voice explaining how to read the wind and understand the patterns of the forest. "I accept your challenge, Commander," she said. The room erupted in more alien laughter. Several creatures began making what seemed to be bets on how badly she would fail. She heard phrases like complete miss and maybe hit the ground and lucky to even fire the weapon correctly. Commander Vextar raised one clawed hand and the noise stopped immediately. "Excellent. Tomorrow at dawn, you will face 5 of our best shooters on the maximum difficulty course. The targets will be at distances your species has never even imagined possible." His yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "I do hope your people are prepared for disappointment." "Sir," Hana said, bowing slightly in the manner her grandmother had taught her. "Thank you for this opportunity." As she left the training wing, she could hear the aliens behind her discussing the upcoming spectacle. They were already planning to invite soldiers from other wings to come watch the human fail. Some were talking about recording it to send to their homeworlds as entertainment. But Hana was thinking about something else entirely. She was remembering the feel of her grandfather's old rifle in her hands, and the sound of his voice saying, "Hana, the best hunters are not the strongest or the fastest. They are the ones who understand their target better than it understands itself." Tomorrow, she would find out if those lessons from the mountains of Earth meant anything among the stars. Hana found her way to the human quarters after wandering through the station for nearly an hour. The corridors all looked the same to her, and twice she had to ask for directions from aliens who looked at her with what she was starting to recognize as amusement. By the time she reached the small section reserved for Earth's representatives, her feet hurt, and her head was spinning from all the strange sights and sounds. The human quarters were simple compared to the rest of the station. The walls were plain metal, and the furniture looked like it came from a military base back on Earth. But after seeing so many alien designs, the familiar human style felt like a warm hug. Kim Taeho was sitting at a small table, reading from a datapad and making notes on paper. He was older than Hana, probably in his 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes. When he looked up and saw her, his face showed concern. "You look like someone just told you that you have to fight a dragon with a wooden stick," he said in Korean. Hana was so relieved to hear her own language that she almost started crying. She sat down across from him and told him everything that had happened in Training Wing 7. When she finished, Taeho was quiet for a long time. "Hana," he said finally, "I have been here for 3 months watching these aliens train. Do you know what I have learned?" She shook her head. "They are not like us. They were made for war. Some of them were born on worlds where everything tries to kill them. Others were changed by their governments to be perfect soldiers. They have abilities we cannot even imagine." Taeho stood up and walked to the small window that looked out into space. The Saurids like Commander Vextar can see heat patterns and different types of light at the same time. Their eyes work like our computers. The insect creatures can process information faster than our best machines. The crystal beings can do math in their heads that would take our scientists hours to figure out. Then why did Earth send us here? Hannah asked. To learn, to understand, to find our place in the galaxy. He turned back to her. But not to compete in contests we cannot win. Hannah felt something stubborn wake up inside her chest. It was the same feeling she had gotten as a child when other kids said she could not do something because she was too small or too quiet. My grandfather always told me that there is more than one way to be strong, she said. Tejo sat back down and looked at her carefully. Tell me about your grandfather. So Hannah told him about Park Dong-sik, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident. She told him about the small house in the mountains where she had spent her childhood. She described the long hunting trips where her grandfather taught her to use his old rifle. He was the best hunter in our village, she said. But he was not the strongest man or the one with the best eyes. He always said that hunting was not about being better than the animal. It was about understanding the animal better than it understood itself. What did he mean by that? He taught me to watch how animals moved, to learn their patterns, to know where they would go before they knew it themselves. Hannah smiled at the memory. He said that if you could be patient enough and quiet enough, you could predict what any creature would do next. Tejo was quiet again. Then he asked, Do you really think you can beat alien soldiers with abilities far beyond any human? I do not know, Hannah answered honestly. But I know that I have to try. That evening, Hannah went to the station's library to learn about alien weapon systems. The library was enormous, with information stored in ways that hurt her head to think about. But the computer systems were designed to work with any species, so she was able to find what she needed. She learned that the plasma rifles used in training worked differently than any Earth weapon. Instead of firing bullets, they shot bolts of energy that moved at the speed of light. The energy could be affected by magnetic fields and atmospheric conditions. The weapons could be adjusted for different types of targets and distances. Most importantly, she learned that the shooting course was designed to test abilities that aliens took for granted. The targets moved in patterns that were supposed to be impossible to predict without enhanced senses or computer assistance. The distances were so great that atmospheric distortion would make the targets appear to be in different places than they actually were. While Hannah studied, word of the contest spread through Nexus Station like wildfire. In the alien mess halls, soldiers from dozens of species gathered to talk about the foolish human who thought she could compete with trained warriors. I heard she has never even fired an energy weapon, said a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many branches. My cousin was there when she accepted the challenge, added a being made of what appeared to be living metal. She is so small that the rifle will probably knock her down when she fires it. The Saurids are taking bets, laughed another alien with 6 arms and skin like rubber. The longest odds are on whether she will hit anything at all. Even among the humans, there was worry. The other Earth representatives found Hannah in the library late that night. Hannah, said Dr. Jung Myung-soo, the team's science officer, perhaps you should reconsider this challenge. If you fail badly, it could affect how the aliens view all humans. The whole galaxy will be watching, added Lieutenant Park So-young, one of the military advisors. This could set back human relations with alien species by decades. Hannah looked up from the weapon specifications she was studying. What if I succeed? With respect, said Dr. Jung, the chances of success are very small. These aliens have been bred and trained for warfare for thousands of years. Some of them are not even truly alive in the way we understand life. They are living weapons. But Hannah was thinking about something her grandfather had told her during her first hunting lesson. She had been frustrated because she kept missing easy shots at targets that were not even moving. Grandfather, she had said, I will never be good at this. My eyes are not sharp enough and my hands shake. He had smiled and put his weathered hand on her shoulder. Little Hannah, you are trying to be something you are not. Stop trying to shoot like someone else, learn to shoot like yourself. That night, while the aliens celebrated their expected victory and the humans worried about the consequences of failure, Hannah did something different. Instead of trying to figure out how to be more like an alien soldier, she closed her eyes and remembered the mountains of Korea. She remembered the sound of wind through pine trees and the way morning mist rose from the valleys. She remembered the patience required to wait for hours without moving until a deer finally appeared. She remembered the calm that came from accepting that she was exactly who she was supposed to be. When she finally went to sleep, Hana dreamed of her grandfather's voice saying, "The best hunters do not try to see everything, little one. They learn to see what matters." Tomorrow she would find out if the lessons from Earth's mountains could work among the stars. Dawn came quickly on Nexus Station. The artificial lights dimmed and brightened in cycles that were supposed to feel like a natural day. But to Hana it felt strange and wrong. She had been awake for hours anyway, sitting quietly in her small room and breathing the way her grandfather had taught her. When she arrived at the shooting range, she could not believe how many aliens had come to watch. The viewing area was packed with creatures from dozens of species, all talking excitedly about the contest. Some held betting slips in their claws, tentacles, or mechanical hands. Others had recording devices that floated in the air around them, like metal birds. The shooting range itself stretched out further than Hana could see. It was built inside one of the station's massive outer sections, with a transparent wall that looked out into space. The course had been designed to test marksmanship across 3 kilometers of artificial terrain that could change to match any environment in the galaxy. Commander Vextar stood on a raised platform where everyone could see him. His golden and silver scales caught the light as he moved, and his 3 yellow eyes swept across the crowd like searchlights. "Citizens of the galaxy," he announced in his thundering voice, "today, we witness a lesson in the natural order. 5 of our finest marksmen will demonstrate why some species rule the stars while others barely survive on single worlds." The crowd cheered and made the strange sounds that passed for applause among different alien species. Hana tried not to. Listen to the comments she could understand. "Look how small she is. I heard humans can only see a tiny part of the light spectrum. This will be over quickly." 4 other shooters walked onto the range beside Hana. She had learned their names from the station records, but seeing them up close was still intimidating. Kethmore was the insect creature she had seen before. Up close, she could see that his compound eyes were made of thousands of tiny lenses that moved independently of each other. His forearms could each hold a weapon, and his movements were so fast they were almost impossible to follow. Brulkan was the crystal being whose body seemed to be made of living diamond. Light passed through him in strange ways, creating rainbow patterns on the ground around his feet. When he moved, his crystalline structure made soft musical sounds like wind chimes. Zephyrin was perhaps the strangest of all. He appeared to be made of pure energy, contained in a roughly humanoid shape. His form shifted and flickered constantly, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like it was coming from far away. Torvex was another saurid like Commander Vextar, but smaller and faster-looking. His scales were darker, almost black, and his 3 eyes moved independently as he scanned the range. Hana could see additional mechanical devices built into his skull that must have been targeting computers. The weapons were displayed on a table, in front of them. The plasma rifles were sleek and deadly-looking, with controls and displays that meant nothing to Hana. Each competitor was allowed to modify their weapon to suit their physiology and fighting style. Kethmore attached multiple targeting scopes to his rifle, one for each of his compound eyes. Brulkan connected his weapon directly to his crystalline body, allowing him to use his entire structure as a targeting computer. Zephyrin did something with his rifle that made it glow with the same energy as his body. Torvex installed a complex targeting system that linked to the computers in his skull. Hana looked at the basic rifle she had been given. It was designed to work with standard humanoid physiology, but compared to the modifications the others had made, it looked simple and primitive. She made only small adjustments to the grip and the sight alignment, the same kind of changes she would make to her grandfather's old hunting rifle. The aliens in the viewing area noticed this and began making more betting sounds. She is not even trying to improve the weapon. Perhaps she does not know how. This is going to be embarrassing. Commander Vextar raised one clawed hand for silence. The contest will consist of 4 stages, each more difficult than the last. Stage 1. Stationary targets at 500 meters. Stage 2. Moving targets with environmental factors. Stage 3. Long-range precision at 2 kilometers. Stage 4. The legendary final shot that has defeated all but the greatest marksman in galactic history. He pointed to the far end of the range where Hana could barely make out what might be targets in the distance. Competitors, take your positions. The 5 shooters spread out along the firing line. Hana found herself between Kethmore and Brulkan. The insect creature's multiple eyes were already tracking targets she could not even see yet. The crystal being was humming softly, his entire body resonating with mathematical calculations. Stage 1. Begin, announced Vextar. 5 targets appeared at the 500-meter mark. They were simple geometric shapes, brightly colored against the artificial terrain. For the alien contestants, this was almost insultingly easy. Their enhanced senses and technological aids made hitting stationary targets at this distance no more difficult than reaching out to touch something. Kethmore fired 5 shots in rapid succession, his multiple arms working in perfect coordination. All 5 targets disappeared immediately. The crowd made approving sounds. Brulkan took a more measured approach. His crystalline structure calculated the perfect trajectory for each shot. His 5 bolts of energy flew in formation like a synchronized dance. 5 more targets vanished. Zephyrin and Torvex were equally successful. Their shots found their marks with mechanical precision that spoke of years of training and natural advantages that Hana could barely comprehend. Then it was her turn. Hana raised her rifle and looked through the simple optical sight. The targets were clear and sharp, much larger than the small game she had hunted with her grandfather. She took a slow breath, the way she had been taught, and gently squeezed the yaw trigger. The first bolt of energy flew straight and true, hitting the center of her target. She took another breath and fired again. Another perfect hit. 3 more shots, 3 more perfect hits. The crowd fell silent. This was not what they had expected. The human had not just hit her targets. She had placed every shot in the exact center with the same precision as the enhanced alien soldiers. Commander Vextar's 3 eyes narrowed as he looked at the results on his display. Interesting, he said in a voice that sounded less amused than before. Perhaps the human is not quite as helpless as she appears. But Hana was not paying attention to the crowd or the commander. She was thinking about her grandfather's voice, telling her that every shot was a conversation between the hunter and the target. The first stage had been easy because the targets were not trying to hide from her. They were simply waiting patiently to be found. The real test would begin with Stage 2, when everything started moving. Stage 2 began with a sound like thunder rolling across the range. The artificial terrain shifted and changed, creating hills, valleys, and obstacles that had not been there moments before. Wind machines started up, sending gusts of air across the course that would affect the path of energy bolts. The targets that appeared this time were not stationary. They moved in complex patterns that seemed random and unpredictable. This is where the real competition begins, announced Commander Vextar. Moving targets at varying distances with atmospheric interference, let us see how our contestants handle real combat conditions. The alien competitors immediately began using their enhanced abilities. Kethmore's compound eyes tracked dozens of targets simultaneously, his head turning in ways that made Hana feel dizzy just watching. His 4 arms worked independently, firing at different targets while calculating the wind resistance and target movement patterns. His shots were impressive. Energy bolts curved through the artificial wind, striking targets that were moving in zigzag patterns across the range. The insect warrior's computational abilities allowed him to predict where each target would be by the time his energy bolt reached it. Brulkan approached the stage differently. His crystalline body began to glow brighter as he processed massive amounts of data about wind speed, target velocity, and trajectory calculations. When he fired, his shots seemed to bend and weave through the air, guided by mathematical precision that was beyond human understanding. Zephyrin had perhaps the greatest advantage of all. As a being made of energy, he could actually see the path that energy bolts would take through the atmospheric distortion. His shots followed curves and angles that looked impossible, striking targets that seemed to be hidden behind obstacles. Torvex relied on the targeting computers built into his skull. Mechanical sounds came from his head as the devices calculated wind patterns and target movements. His shots were methodical and precise, each one fired only after his computers confirmed a successful trajectory. The crowd was impressed. The alien contestants were performing exactly as everyone expected, using their natural gifts and technological enhancements to overcome the challenging conditions. Then attention turned to Hana. She stood quietly at her firing position, watching the moving targets with eyes that seemed almost sleepy compared to the intense focus of the alien soldiers. She was not making rapid calculations or tracking multiple targets at once. Instead, she seemed to be listening to something that no one else could hear. In the viewing area, an ancient alien named Granthal watched with growing interest. He was one of the ethereal species, being so old and wise that other aliens treated them with deep respect. His translucent form flickered as he leaned forward to get a better look at the human. Granthal had been watching marksmanship contests for over 300 years. He had seen every type of enhancement and ability that the galaxy could produce, but something about the human's approach was different from anything he had witnessed before. Hana raised her rifle and took aim at a target that was moving in a wide circle around an artificial hill. But instead of trying to calculate where the target would be, she seemed to be feeling its rhythm. Her breathing became slow and steady, matching some pattern that only she could perceive. She fired. The energy bolt curved through the wind and struck the target perfectly. "Lucky shot," someone in the crowd muttered. But Hana was already tracking her second target. This one was moving in an erratic pattern, speeding up and slowing down in ways that seemed completely random. The alien contestants had needed multiple shots to hit similar targets, using their enhanced senses to eventually predict the pattern. Hana watched the target for nearly 30 seconds without firing. The crowd began to get restless, thinking she was confused or overwhelmed. But Granthal noticed something remarkable. The human was not trying to predict the target's movement. She was learning to move with it. When Hana finally fired, her shot seemed to flow naturally through the artificial wind. The energy bolt found its target at the exact moment when the target's erratic movement brought it into the perfect position. "Impossible," whispered Kethmore, his compound eyes focusing on the human with new interest. Hana continued through the stage with the same patient approach. She did not try to outthink the targets or overwhelm them with rapid fire. Instead, she seemed to develop a conversation with each one, learning its personality and rhythm before taking her shot. By the end of stage 2, something remarkable had happened. All 5 contestants had successfully hit their targets, but the quality of the shots was different. The aliens had achieved success through superior technology and enhanced abilities. Hana had achieved success through something else entirely, a kind of harmony with the targets that made her shots look effortless and natural. Commander Vextar stared at his display screen with growing confusion. The human's performance made no sense according to everything he knew about marksmanship and combat. She should have been overwhelmed by the moving targets and atmospheric interference. Instead, she had matched the performance of soldiers with abilities far beyond her own. "Stage 3, he announced, his voice sounding less confident than before. Long-range precision at 2 kilometers with advanced atmospheric distortion. This was where the real separation was supposed to happen. At 2 kilometers, the targets would be barely visible even to enhanced alien senses. The atmospheric distortion would make them appear to be in completely different locations than they actually were. This stage had been designed specifically to test the limits of alien enhancement technology. The targets that appeared at the far end of the range were small, no larger than a dinner plate, and they moved in complex, 3-dimensional patterns. The atmospheric distortion made them shimmer and dance like mirages in a desert. Zephyrin should have dominated this stage completely. His energy-based vision could see through most types of interference. But as he fired his first shot, something unexpected happened. The energy bolt passed through empty air where the target appeared to be. The atmospheric distortion was more complex than anyone had anticipated. Even his ability to see energy paths was being fooled by the sophisticated interference systems. By Other alien contestants were having similar problems. Kethmore's compound eyes could track the targets, but the distortion made it impossible to determine their true locations. Brulkan's crystalline calculations kept coming up with different answers as the interference patterns shifted. Torvex's targeting computers were producing error messages as they struggled to compensate for the unknown variables. One by one, the enhanced alien soldiers began to miss their shots. Their superior technology and natural abilities were being overwhelmed by the complexity of the challenge. In the viewing area, Granthal found himself holding his breath as he watched the human prepare for her turn. How could a being with primitive senses possibly succeed where enhanced aliens were failing? Hana raised her rifle and looked toward the distant targets. She could barely see them, and when she could, they seemed to flicker and dance like flames in the wind. Everything her grandfather had taught her suggested that this shot was impossible, but then she remembered something he had told her during a particularly difficult hunt. They had been tracking a deer for hours through thick fog that made it impossible to see more than a few meters ahead. "Grandfather," she had whispered, "how can we find something we cannot see?" He had smiled and touched his chest over his heart. "Sometimes, little Hana, you must shoot with more than your eyes." Now, 2 kilometers from targets she could barely see, Hana closed her eyes and listened with her whole body. She felt the rhythm of the station around her, the patterns of air movement, the subtle vibrations that traveled through the metal floor. When she opened her eyes and fired, the crowd fell completely silent. The energy bolt flew straight and true, striking the target perfectly despite the interference and distortion. Granthal began to understand something that the other observers had missed entirely. The human was not fighting against her limitations. She was using them as strengths. By the end of Stage 3, the mood in the viewing area had changed completely. What had started as entertainment, watching a primitive human fail spectacularly, had become something else entirely. The aliens were no longer laughing or making bets. They were watching in confused silence as their understanding of marksmanship was challenged by something they could not explain. Hana had not just matched the enhanced alien soldiers. In some cases, she had performed better. While Kethmore struggled with the atmospheric distortion confusing his compound eyes, and while Brulkan's crystalline calculations produced conflicting results, the human had maintained steady accuracy. That seemed to ignore the technological challenges entirely. Commander Vextar looked at his display screens with growing concern. This was not supposed to be possible. Every military academy in the galaxy taught that precision shooting required enhanced senses, computational assistance, or technological aids. The human had none of these advantages, yet somehow she was keeping pace with the most advanced marksmen in known space. "There must be some mistake," he muttered to his aide, a smaller Saurid with nervous yellow eyes. "Run diagnostics on all the equipment. Check for interference or malfunction." The aide quickly worked through the technical systems. "Everything is functioning perfectly, Commander. No errors detected." Vextar's 3 eyes narrowed as he stared at the human standing calmly at her firing position. She was not celebrating her success or showing any signs of excitement. Instead, she seemed to be in some kind of meditative state, breathing slowly and staring out at the range as if she were seeing something that no one else could perceive. "Stage 4, announced Vextar, his voice echoing across the range. The legendary final shot. A murmur went through the crowd. Even among the aliens, the 4th stage was famous throughout the galaxy. It was a shot that had been attempted by thousands of marksmen over the centuries, but successfully completed by only 12 individuals. Those 12 names were carved into a monument at the Galactic Military Academy, and their achievements were studied by every serious student of marksmanship. At the far end of the range, 3 kilometers away, a single target appeared. It was no larger than a coin from Earth, and it moved in a pattern that was truly random, generated by quantum fluctuations that made it impossible to predict. The target was partially hidden behind interference barriers that blocked most sensors and disrupted targeting systems. To make the shot even more challenging, the target only appeared for brief moments before disappearing behind the barriers. The history of this station, Vextar continued, Only 12 beings have ever successfully completed this shot. All of them possessed enhancement technology or natural abilities far beyond the galactic average. Today we will see if anyone can join their ranks. The crowd fell silent. Even the background hum of the station's machinery seemed muted. Kethmore went first. The insect warrior activated all of his targeting systems, his compound eyes tracking the tiny target as it appeared and disappeared behind the barriers. His forearms worked together to stabilize his rifle while his computational abilities calculated thousands of possible trajectories. He fired 3 times, each shot perfectly aimed according to his calculations. All 3 energy bolts passed, through empty space. The random movement of the target had made prediction impossible, even for his enhanced abilities. Kethmore stepped back from the firing line, his head drooping in disappointment. In his language of clicks and buzzes, he said, something that the translation system rendered as, "I have brought shame to my hive." Brilkan approached the challenge with mathematical precision. His crystalline body began to glow as he processed massive amounts of data about quantum mechanics and probability theory. He attempted to use pure mathematics to predict the unpredictable. His shot was a work of art, curving through the interference barriers with perfect calculation, but the target had moved to a position that no amount of mathematics could have predicted. The energy bolt passed millimeters from its intended mark. The crystal being's light dimmed as he stepped away from the firing line. His musical voice said, simply, "The universe is more complex than my calculations." Zephyrin tried to use his energy-based nature to his advantage. As a being made of pure energy, he could theoretically track the quantum fluctuations that controlled the target's movement. His form flickered and pulsed as he attempted to synchronize with the target's quantum signature. His shot came closer than the others, actually grazing the edge of the target. But the interference barriers disrupted his energy-based senses at the crucial moment, causing his aim to shift just enough to miss a clean hit. "So close," he said in his distant voice as he floated back from the firing line. But close enough to touch the impossible. Torvex was the last of the aliens to attempt the shot. His targeting computers ran through millions of calculations in seconds, analyzing every successful shot in galactic history. His mechanical skull devices hummed and clicked as they attempted to find a pattern in the target's truly random movement. When he fired, his shot was perfect, according to every computational model. If the target had been where his computers predicted it would be, the shot would have been legendary. But the quantum randomness made all predictions meaningless. His energy bolt struck one of the interference barriers and dispersed harmlessly. 4 of the galaxy's finest marksmen had failed. The crowd was subdued, remembering why this shot was considered nearly impossible. Even with their enhanced abilities and advanced technology, they could not overcome the challenge of hitting something that moved with true randomness. Now all attention turned to Hana. She walked slowly to the firing line, carrying her simple rifle with its basic optical sight. Compared to the enhanced weapons and targeting systems used by the other contestants, her equipment looked like a child's toy. In the viewing area, Grandthul leaned forward with intense interest. He had seen the legendary shot attempted hundreds of times over his long life. Every successful marksman had used advanced technology or possessed natural abilities that bordered on the supernatural. What could a primitive human possibly do that they could not? Hana raised her rifle and looked through the sight toward the distant target. At 3 kilometers, she could barely see the interference barriers, much less the coin-sized target that appeared and disappeared behind them. The task seemed utterly impossible, but instead of trying to track the target or calculate its movement, Hana did something that surprised everyone. She closed her eyes. The crowd began to murmur. Surely the human had given up. How could anyone make such a shot with their eyes closed? But Hana was not giving up. She was remembering her grandfather's final lesson, taught to her on his deathbed when she was 16 years old. "Hana," he had whispered with his last breath, "the greatest hunters do not hunt with their eyes or their minds. They hunt with their hearts. When everything else fails, trust the wisdom that lives deeper than thought." Standing on the firing line of the most advanced military station in the galaxy, Hana let go of everything she thought she knew about marksmanship. She stopped trying to see the target or predict its movement. Instead, she listened to something deeper, a rhythm that connected all things in the universe. Her breathing slowed until it matched some cosmic pattern that no alien could detect with their enhanced senses. Her heartbeat steadied into a rhythm that seemed to sync with the quantum fluctuations controlling the target's movement. When she opened her eyes and raised her rifle, there was something different about her. The nervous human recruit was gone, replaced by something ancient and patient and absolutely certain. The shot rang out across the range, for a moment that seemed to last forever. Everyone watched the energy bolt curve through space, passing between interference barriers with impossible precision. The bolt flew straight toward a point in space where no target was visible. And then, at the exact moment the energy arrived, the target appeared. Perfect center hit. The range fell into complete silence. Even the station's machinery seemed to stop, humming. Thousands of alien beings stared in shock at the impossible thing they had just witnessed. The human had made the legendary shot. The silence stretched across the shooting range like a held breath. Thousands of alien beings from dozens of species stared at the display screens that confirmed what their eyes had seen, but their minds could not accept. The primitive human with her basic weapon and unenhanced senses had accomplished something that only 12 beings in galactic history had ever achieved. Then, from the viewing area, came a sound unlike any other. Granthul, the ancient ethereal, began the slow, rhythmic pulsing that was his species' highest form of respect. His translucent form glowed brighter with each pulse, and the sound resonated through the station like the beating of a cosmic heart. One by one, other aliens began to join in their own ways. The crystalline beings created harmonic tones that filled the air with music. The insectoids clicked their shells in complex patterns that spoke of deep admiration. Even the energy beings pulsed with colors that indicated profound respect. But Commander Vextar remained silent, his 3 yellow eyes fixed on Hana as she carefully set down her rifle and stepped back from the firing line. His scaled face showed confusion and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "How?" he asked, his thundering voice carrying across the range. It was not a demand, but a genuine question from a warrior who had seen something beyond his comprehension. Hana bowed in the manner her grandmother had taught her, showing respect even to those who had doubted her. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. "My grandfather always said that the best hunters do not try to see everything," she replied. "They learn to see what matters most." She looked around at the assembled aliens, meeting eyes and optical sensors and energy patterns that served as vision for the various species. "You have gifts that humans can only dream of. Enhanced senses, computational abilities, technological aids that can process information faster than our minds can think. These are wonderful advantages." Commander Vextar's head tilted slightly, a sign of curiosity among his species. "Then how did you succeed where we failed?" "Because," Hana said simply, "limitations can teach you things that advantages cannot." She gestured toward the distant target, now motionless after the completion of the contest. The target moved with true randomness. Your enhanced senses tried to find patterns where none existed. Your computers tried to calculate the uncalculable. Your technological aids searched for data that was not there. Granthul floated closer, his ancient form shimmering with interest. "And what did you do instead, young human?" "I stopped trying to predict what the target would do," Hana replied. "Instead, I learned to move with it. My grandfather taught me that sometimes the hunter and the hunted must become partners in a dance that neither controls." The crowd murmured as translation systems worked to convey concepts that had no direct equivalents in many alien languages. The idea of cooperation between hunter and prey was foreign to species that had evolved through conquest and domination. Kethmore stepped forward, his compound eyes reflecting light in patterns that indicated deep thought. "But how can you partner with something that moves randomly? How can you dance with chaos?" Hana smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the station, she looked completely at ease. "Because chaos is not the enemy of harmony. They are part of the same song." My grandfather taught me to listen to rhythms that exist deeper than patterns, to find connections that go beyond logic. She paused, searching for words that could bridge the gap between human understanding and alien logic. Your species developed amazing abilities because you needed them to survive. But humans developed something different. We learned to survive by finding our place in systems larger than ourselves. We became part of the world around us instead of trying to control it. Commander Vextar was quiet for a long moment, his three eyes moving independently as he processed this information. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its mocking tone and carried genuine respect. You speak of wisdom that our military academies do not teach, he said. Our strategies focus on overwhelming the enemy with superior force or technology. But you suggest something different, becoming one with the challenge instead of defeating it. Not instead of, Hana corrected gently. In addition to, both approaches have value, but perhaps working together, we could learn from each other. In Nabur, the viewing area, Kim Taeho watched with pride and amazement as alien commanders began to look at humans with new eyes. The dismissive laughter and casual mockery were gone, replaced by curiosity and respect. He could see them beginning to understand that humanity's apparent weaknesses might actually represent a unique strength. Over the following days, news of the contest spread throughout the galaxy. The story of the human who made the impossible shot became legend. But more importantly, it changed how alien species viewed Earth's representatives. Human recruits found themselves no longer ignored or dismissed, but studied with genuine interest. Military strategists from advanced civilizations requested meetings to discuss human tactical approaches. Scientists wanted to understand how human intuition worked. Even the most arrogant species began to acknowledge that there might be more than one path to excellence. Hana herself was offered positions with the galaxy's most elite military units, but she chose to remain with the training program, helping to develop new methods that combined alien technology with human insight. She worked with alien instructors to create courses that taught patience alongside precision, intuition alongside calculation. The shooting range where she had made her legendary shot became a pilgrimage site for marksmen from across the galaxy. They came not just to attempt the impossible fourth stage, but to learn about the human approach to marksmanship. Some succeeded where they had failed before, having learned to listen to rhythms deeper than their enhanced senses could detect. 6 months after her arrival at Nexus Station, Hana sat in her quarters writing a message to send back to Earth. Outside her window, the stars wheeled slowly in patterns that seemed random, but contained harmonies that her grandfather would have understood. Dear grandfather, she wrote, you were right about so many things. Patience really is more powerful than speed. Understanding really is more valuable than strength. And finding your place in the greater pattern really is more important than trying to control everything around you. She paused in her writing, thinking about all the alien friends she had made and all the lessons she had learned. The galaxy is full of hunters, but they are just beginning to understand what it means to be human. We may not be the strongest, or the fastest, or the most technologically advanced, but we know how to find harmony in chaos, and that might be the most valuable gift of all. As she finished her message, Hana could almost hear her grandfather's voice carried on the recycled air of the station. Little Hana, he seemed to say, you have learned the greatest lesson of all. True strength comes not from what you can force the world to do, but from understanding your place in what the world is already doing. The humans of Earth had found their place among the stars not through conquest or superior technology, but through an ancient wisdom that taught them to dance with the universe instead of trying to dominate it. And in teaching this wisdom to others, they had given the galaxy something it had never possessed before, a different way of seeing what it meant to be strong. In the end, the greatest victory was not Hana's impossible shot, but the understanding it brought to countless species across the galaxy. Sometimes the student becomes the teacher simply by showing that there is more than one way to succeed.